Hey everyone, it's me, Rami Marks, your Tangled Yogi out here in Northern California. I just wanted to jump on here real quick and do a Rocking Out Valentine's Day edition. Some of you have asked me how I do my stones, and so I thought I would come on here today and do a quick class for you and then set you loose to create and share some stones out in your community. I know for me, I love to put them out on Valentine's Day for people to find. They call that random acts of Zentangle. And so let's go ahead and get started and create a really nice random act of Zentangle. So I'm going to talk about the things that we're going to need for our little project today. You're going to want to start with a really nice smooth stone. Now, I happen to live very close to where there's a river and I go rock hunting all the time. And when the stone is really super smooth, it makes it a lot easier to work on. However, you can work on stones that do have a little bit of texture to them. This one right here has a little bit more texture to it, and this one right here also has a little bit more texture to it. The texture will eat up your color pencil a little bit, but it still works out just fine. Okay? All right, so let's talk about the things that we're going to need. I'm going to be working with an Identi pen. This is a really great pen because it has the fine side, and I love this because it doesn't run and it doesn't smear. So it's definitely one of my favorites. You could also use a Sharpie that is a fine point Sharpie. Those are wonderful for working on your rocks. I will be working with a graphite pencil today to draw on my rocks, but if you happen to have a really dark rock, you can use the General's charcoal white, and I'll show you what I mean by that. This is a really dark stone, and so if I'm drawing and I want to see what my design is going to be, I can use the white to map it out, as it were. And I've used this quite a bit. The reason why I like it also is because you can erase it right off of the stone. So if you have a flub up or a opportunity that you don't care for, you can always take it off. Okay, I am going to be working with the Sakura Gold and White gel pen, and I also happen to have my Posca white pen. This is a really nice fine nibbed pen, and I do really love this for doing highlights with rocks. It's a really, really great pen, and I believe that this one, it's a 0.7 mm. So you want the finest point Posca that you can find. I love these pens, they're great. Now, if you want to set your rocks, you can use Mod Podge. I love this stuff. I think it's great. You just have to go very, very lightly over the top of it, and you want to make sure that your piece is completely dry before you actually get started with this. And you can see that I've just got a nice soft brush that I would put that on with, and I'll show you how I do it in the video. So with that said, let's get started. So I happen to have a lighter color stone here, and it'll probably work out better in the end for the video anyway. So you can see that I have this one that's already done, and I plan on putting these out on Valentine's Day for people to find all around this little pond that's by our house here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the Tangle Heart Nouveau, which we actually just learned in our last video, and I thought that we would use it on our rock here. Now you can see my rocks are not the same size, so it will come out a little bit differently, but we're going to just go ahead and play. Okay, so to do Heart Nouveau, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with my graphite pencil here, and you can see that I'm kind of mapping this out as I go. So I'm going to start by doing my upside down heart here. And once I've got that upside down heart, I'm going to do those prongs that come out of Heart Nouveau. So you can see that I'm going to put those two lines out on either side here. And let's go ahead and zoom in on this so that you can see it a little bit better. Once I've got that, you can see that I'm trying to show you this while not creating a shadow on the piece here. So I'm going to come down and create that wavy line underneath for the base of Heart Nouveau, and then I'll go ahead and I'll do the arch up above, and then I'm going to do the petals that come out on the side. So I'm still doing this with graphite here in case I want to make any changes to the piece. And then finally, I'm going to go ahead and just do a little wavy line for the stem of Heart Nouveau. Now once I have that the way I want it, I'm going to zoom back out a little bit. I'm going to pick up my trusty Identi pen here. And what I love about the Identi pen is that it'll go over just about anything. So I'm just going to come in and start to work with the fine side of my piece here, or my pen. And then I'll go ahead just the way that I started and start to bring that wavy line underneath. I'm going to go ahead and do the arch. And then I'm going to go ahead and do those petals. Now you'll have to kind of manipulate your rock to work for you here. You can see that I'm turning my rock around here and making all of these kind of movements throughout the piece. You want to make it so that the pen can work on what you're working on. And then finally I'm going to come in and start to create that wavy line. And sometimes you hit a little bump or, whatever, because the texture of the rock will come through. No rock is perfect here. And then I'll go ahead and I'll add in just a couple of leaves. This is going to have a little S pattern to it. And then I'll go over to the other side. I like to alternate. And then maybe I'll do one more just for fun. Now you know me, I cannot resist putting tipple into any tangle. So tipple is just a couple of circles that are attached to each other, and usually they are different sizes. So you can see there's a large tipple, a smaller tipple, and then a medium-sized tipple. And I'll go ahead and just pull my ink into those little funky squares that we get. I'll come over here and I'll add one. And pull my ink. And then maybe I can add just a couple more down in here. Maybe I'll let this effervesce a little bit. Every time I do it, it's always a little bit different. So maybe I'll put one out here just for fun. Alright, so I've got my basic plan here. So if you're kind of going along with me and you've got your stone, this is probably where you would pause the video. So I'm just going to take a minute to gather the things that I need for this piece, and then I'm going to show you how I color it in. There are certain colors in the Prismacolor set that are great for working on stones. One of my favorites is the True Green, which is PC 910. You can see that this is kind of like a minty green. There's a lot of white in this color, and so when it gets onto a rock, it really jumps out. You can see that I used it in the stem over here. I'm also going to be working with Peacock Green, which is PC 907. If you don't have this color, you can also use the Grass Green. That works out pretty well, and that's PC 909. So let's just jump in with a little bit of that green here. I'm going to start by zooming in on this a little bit. We'll take this guy off to the side. And you can see that I'm just coming in and I'm not pressing very hard. I don't have to. That color just grabs onto the rock in a really nice way. Now you can still see that there's a little bit of graphite in there, but that's okay, it's not a big deal. I'm going to go ahead and just start to pop that color in here. And I'm not going to worry about doing any of my blending, I'm just adding the color. I'm going to go ahead and start to bring in a little bit more into the stem. And I love using color pencils on rocks because, one, it's not messy. You can see that I've got pretty good control of that pencil, and it really does grab onto the stones pretty well. Now, if your stone happens to have a lot of grit to it, it will eat up your pencil a little bit, but if you're okay with, being committed to the cause and going for it, it's just fine. You just want to try to get as smooth a stone as you can. Usually you can pick these up from those landscaping places that have mulch or pebbles or whatever. They always are willing to let go of a few stones for artists that will come in. Now you can see that I'm going to pick up my darker color here, and I'm going to just start to add in a little bit of that darker green right up at the top where the points are. And then I'm going to get right under the stone here and do a little bit, or right under the heart, and get a little bit of that really nice shadow on the heart. I'm going to pick back up a little bit of my light green and do a little blend there just by blurring it out. And then I'll go ahead and I'll pick up that darker green again and start to come in and do a little shadow underneath the head of Heart Nouveau. And then you're also going to see me turn the tile and do a little bit at the bottom. Now once I've got that, I'm going to come back in, pick up my light green, and just give it a little bit of a blur. I'm going to pick up that light green again and start to use it at the top of the leaf on each side and down into this area right in here. So you can already see it's starting to come together fairly quickly here. I'm also going to pick up a little bit of that darker green here, and I'm going to put it in the under piece of that leaf. You can see that I'm going to turn the stone to make this work for my hands here. So same concept as Zentangle, turning the tile, turning the stone, same thing. Now with the darker color, I do have a tendency to come back and do some blending, and you can see if I zoom in on this, there's some grit in there. And so for me, taking that lighter color and just rolling it over the darker color, you can fill in some of that grit, and it really gives it a nice softness and really makes your colors a lot more rich and interesting. Now I am pressing with like a medium pressure here, so it definitely will give it a little bit of, a dulling of the point on my pencil, but that's just part of working on stones. So when I zoom out, you can see that I'm getting a really nice feel with that color pencil. Now, if I wanted to create a little bit of a highlight in here, I am picking up my white pencil from Prisma. This is PC938, and I'm just going to work down one side of my stem here. And this is going to give this a little bit of a highlight and just give it a little bit of interest. And you can see that that gives it a little glow. You could even go back over the top of it if you didn't want to see just white. You could come in and very, very lightly just bring in that green right over the top of it. And that gives this a really interesting softness. So I'm going to zoom out here, and you can see there's the beginning of our Heart Nouveau. So I'm going to let go of my greens, and I'm going to start to bring in some of my yellows and my reds. So I've picked up my magenta, which is PC930. I really love this color. It's one of my favorites for doing flower colors. And then I'm also going to be using the yellowed orange, which is PC1002. And you can see that this is a nice cold red and that's a nice warm yellow here. Now I will be working with a little bit of the white again, and this is the PC938, and I'll show you what I mean by that. So I'm going to start out by picking up a little bit of the magenta here, and you're going to see that it's going to just jump right onto this particular stone. Now this is a lighter stone, so it's definitely going to get right on there. So light gray or granite color would be just fine. If you're working with a darker color, I'm going to show you in a minute a technique that you can use for working on a darker color. So I'm just coming in and putting a little bit of a shadow around that Heart Nouveau. Now I'm going to show you that technique that I was just talking about. So I've got my white in my hand, and let's just say that you're working on a really dark stone. Also, I'm using this because yellow does not show up as well as other colors when you're working with stones. So what I'm doing is basically laying a foundation for my yellow here. So I'm just coming in and I'm putting a little bit of white down first. And then I'm going to pick up my yellow, and you're going to see me start to break up that line of demarcation where the red is meeting the white. And you can see that I'm letting it kind of dip back into that red a little bit. Now you'll notice that I'll leave a little bit of white up at the top of that Heart Nouveau. You can see that this is really starting to glow, and it has a really painterly quality to it, which I really love. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to do the same thing over here. So I'm just coming in and using a little bit of that red just to give a little bit of interest right next to the stem here. I'll pick up a little bit of that white. And you can see I'm not going into the red with the white. I don't want to get any pink in there. I'm trying to leave this as poppy as possible. And when I say poppy, like get a little bit of drama in there. And you can see that when I start bringing that yellow in there, I'm letting it dive back into the red. I'm going to do one more time in here just to get a little bit of a glow. And then I'm going to come in with a little bit of that white. I'll pick up a little bit of that yellow. And you can see it's going to really make it pop. So that when I zoom out, look at how cool that is already. It's already starting to come together. So I'm going to finish up the other side, and then when we come back, I'm going to do a little bit of tipple, and then we're going to work on the background. So now I'm going to pick up the blues, and for me, you know that I love this color, the PC992 Light Aqua. So great. What a great color for doing tipple. But you know, I do tipple in all different colors, but I really love working with this one. And I'm also going to be working with the Peacock Blue, which is PC1027, but if you have Denim Blue or Copenhagen Blue, those will work out just fine on this. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to start to work inside of tipple. Now, True Green and the Light Aqua look a lot alike, but once you get that dark color in there, it really ends up working out just fine. So I've got my pencil in my hand here, and I'm just going to start to work in a little bit of that light aqua. You can see that I'm going to leave that point alone where my light source is going to be, and then I'm going to come in and start to add in a little bit of that darker blue. I'll pick up a little bit of that light aqua and I'll blur it out so that I get a really nice soft feel. And then I'm going to pick up that white that I've been using and I'm going to give this a little bit of a light source. So, you know, a lot of you who have worked with the tan pencils or the tan tiles, this has a lot of that same feeling with working with tan tiles or working with the gray tiles for that matter. And I do love working on colored tiles because I feel like it takes the color and just makes it so much more interesting. I do love working with the white, but working on colored tiles is really something special. So you can see that that's starting to give this kind of this painterly glow. I'm going to do that in all of the tipple that I have on this piece. I'll be right back. So you know that I love working with the white from the Prismacolor set. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to bring in a little bit of that background to the piece here. So I'm just going to dust in very, very lightly a little bit of the white. And the reason why I like doing this is because it creates a really nice border around the piece. So you can see that I'm going to just lay down that pencil on its side and start to just kind of skim on the rim of the rock here and just start to bring in a little bit of that background. And for me, I always like to see a nice clean line along the edge of the stone just because it just makes it look a little bit more polished or a little bit more finished. So you can see that I'm just kind of running it along the edge, but trying to keep a nice little line in there. You can see I'm kind of pushing a little bit. I'll even come up towards the top and run it along the edge. So I'm really just following the shape of the stone. And don't worry if it's scratchy or any of those things. As soon as we start adding color over the top of it, it all will just kind of blend in and disappear. So I'm not pressing hard, I'm just coming in and moving that stone around to make it work for my hands here. So you can see I'm just running it along the edge. Now there are stones that you can buy on Etsy that are in heart shapes. I taught a heart class last year for some friends of mine that lived close by, and it was really fun. In fact, I'll bring it out before the end of the video. And so you can get these stones that people do those dotting mandalas on, and they're very smooth. And I think you can get those for like maybe $4 or $5 for a couple of stones. They're great, and they're already pre-treated so that you don't have to worry about it. So I'm going to take a little bit of the light purple here. I've got Parma purple, and oh no, I don't. I have lilac in my hand. Oof, look at me pulling some lilac out. You know they discontinued that color. I have a few Zentangle students that sent me their lilac when I was very sad and missing this color. So shout out to my students that did that. So I'm just going to start to add lilac into the background here. And as I continue to bring that lilac around, you can see I'm leaving a little bit of white on the edges. I kind of want it to have a little bit of like a ghostly feel on the outside edge. So you can see that I'm just laying that foundation of lilac in there, and I'll leave a little bit of that white there on the outside edge. Bring some of this around. That white just gives it such a pretty ethereal look. Turning the tile to make it work for your hands. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up a little bit of that darker purple. I love that Dahlia purple, PC 1009. And I'm just going to create a couple of shadows in here just to keep this really nice and rich. So you'll see me just kind of poke through in these little corners that just make this a little bit interesting. I'll come down in here, over in here. You know, I'm looking for those little kind of crevices. I'll even go up top and add a couple in here and over here. Now once I've got that, I'm going to pick back up that lilac again, and I'm going to start to do that blurring. So I'll just run right over the top of that dahlia purple and just kind of move that color around. Remember, whenever you're working with that lighter color, remember that it has all that wax in it, and so the wax moves the pigment around and makes it very painterly. I would say I'm using a medium to heavy pressure here just to get it to kind of flow. And you can see that just by being a little bit random with it makes it really interesting. We'll come up top and blur it out. And then clean that up a little bit. So you can see that this is really pretty. Now you know me, I cannot help myself. I like to do wallpaper wherever I can. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to find little spaces where I can do some wallpaper. So I'm going to start up top, and I'm going to do a little bit of printemps, which is a spiral. And you know how I love to do the spirals nice and slow. When you go slow with your spirals, they look really elegant and pretty. And so for me, I'm always trying to go really slow with them. I also love to vary up the size of the spirals just to keep it looking a little bit more unpredictable. And this one will probably be a little bit smaller too. So you can see that that looks really nice up there. So I'm just going to find little places on the piece where I feel like, you know, it would be really fun to put in a little bit of wallpaper. Now, as I get closer to the edge, I do stop so that I don't go over the edge. I want it to stay on the top of the piece. But if you feel like you want to let it go right over the edge, you do you. I'm just taking you for the ride. Remember, you're the artist. And I think I can probably do one more on the other side. Looks pretty good to me. So I'm going to finish up this, and then when we come back, I'm going to add a little gold and a little bit of white. I've picked up my gold Jelly Roll metallic pen, and I'm just coming in and starting to add some of that gold into the heart. Now I know some of you have a little bit of difficulty with these pens. I want you to know that I'm not even really touching the stone here. So I'm just really just letting that ink kind of leap out from the pen and grab onto the stone. Now you will need to let this dry for a little bit of time, maybe like, I'm going to say like 15 to 20 minutes before you put any Mod Podge over the top of this. You really want to make sure that that color is set. So you can see that I'm just kind of coming in and looking for any places where I've missed the background. But I love the look of gold underneath Mod Podge, and I'll show you what I mean by that. So this is a piece that I did a couple of years ago, and that's the gold underneath the Mod Podge. And you can see the Mod Podge gives it a really nice sheen, but the gold has stayed really metallic too, which is nice. So once I've got this the way I want it, I'll let it dry for a minute. Now I am going to pick up my Jelly Roll 10. You can use the Posca for this part. I will just, let this sit for a little while and let it set. So I'm going to go ahead and come in and add a little bit of a line in here with maybe some dots, a let it come in over here and have some dots. Just kind of figuring out where you want it to have a little bit of a highlight to it. And I really love the white pen for adding a little bit of interest into a piece. I'm going to go ahead and turn this so that I'm not making a shadow here. I think I'll add a nice little highlight going down the stem here, which is kind of pretty. And then I'll put a little bit of a highlight in my tipple that I have in here. So you can see that I'm just adding those in. I'm getting right in there. Really pretty, and has just kind of a neat feel to it, right? And if you wanted to, you could even come in and add some dots into your printemps and make that kind of ornate if you wanted to. I'm going to turn this on its side here. And you could even come into where your leaves are and add in a little bit of interest into your leaves. Which is really pretty. I really like the way this one is coming out. This is really, really fun. So I'm going to play just for a couple of minutes, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this aside and let it dry for a while. Now, you know, if you've lost like where your lines are because the color pencil has gone over your line a little bit, you can always come back in and redefine your lines. Now, what I like to say about this kind of stuff is I'm barely touching the stone. If you push hard, it's going to pick up a lot of the wax and clog the pen. So for me, you know, I just have that very, very light touch and just run it over the top so that it doesn't clog up the pen. And I really think this is going to be a fun one. You can see that I lost a little bit of that definition around the heart. So I'm going to come in and just redefine that area around the heart as well. You could even take some of that white pen, which is really fun, and even add in a nice little highlight right over the gold. Alright, so I'm going to take these, I'm going to let them dry for a little while, and then when I come back, I'm going to show you guys how I do the Mod Podge. Alright, so let's do some Mod Podge. So Mod Podge is just kind of like a glaze that you can do over the top here. And what I do is I just start by going very, very lightly over the piece. And you're going to see that I'm going to just lay it on nice and thick. You want to make sure that you're getting a nice thickness to it, but you can also see that I'm not moving it very much. I'm just kind of laying it down on the piece and just kind of giving it a little bit of a smooth out, but not a ton. And the reason for this is that I don't want to move my color pencil too much, and so I find that little goes a long way. So I'm really just layering it on there, and you can see that it's kind of got a glaze over the top of it. And I'm trying to keep my glaze pretty uniform as well. You can see that I'm not trying to get over the edges or anything like that. I'm trying to keep it as uniform as I can. So I'm just getting that on there and not touching it too much. I'm actually going very, very lightly with this. And so you can see that I've left kind of like a lot of the white on there. Which is really fun. And so I'll leave it just like that, and it'll take about a half hour to dry, and then once it's dry it's going to have that really shiny kind of feel to it. It won't be like overtly shiny, like this piece isn't overtly shiny, but it has a little bit of a sheen to it, making it look as though it is finished. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do this one as well, and then when we come back I'll show you the finished product. Okay, so here we are, and you can see that it's got a little sheen on it, but it really looks nice and clean. It looks, finished, which I really like. And this one I actually started working on the back side of it and put in a little lovey-dovey, and I'll go ahead and I'll glaze this side as well with the Mod Podge as well. So that'll be a really fun rock for somebody to find when they're out with their loved ones walking around the pond. And here's the one that I did today in class, which is really fun. And you can see it's got that nice finished feel to it. So I hope that you enjoyed this little tutorial on how to put Zentangles on stones. I hope that you will go out and do random acts of Zentangle on Valentine's Day and maybe place a few of these for people to find. You never know, you might really make somebody's day. Well, that's it for me. I'm Rami Marks, your Tangled Yogi. I would really love to see some of your stones on our Facebook page, which is the Tangled Yogi Art Community page. And I would love it if you would give the video a thumbs up or a good review, or even better, share it with a friend and hit that subscribe button. All right, happy Valentine's Day, everybody. I look forward to seeing all of your creations. Bye for now.